What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Tonight I'm going to be talking about my 5 favorite hostels on the southern half of the AT. To define southern half of the AT for me was from Springer Mountain in Georgia up to Harpers Ferry in West Virginia. And the reason for that is simply because I flipped up to Maine at Harpers Ferry, if you don't already know. So anyways, I'm going to speak about the southern half of the AT. I spent a lot of time hiking the southern half of the AT. Spent about 6 months continuously hiking the southern part of the AT from Springer Mountain up to Harpers Ferry. So as you can imagine, I checked out all of the towns, spent a day or two in pretty much all of them. Really enjoyed myself. Now, I didn't stay in a hostel in every town, although I did stay in every town. And the biggest reason for that is because on the first day of my hike, I met somebody that I ended up hiking with, and we ended up in town together every time we got to town. And it didn't always make sense to go to a hostel. Sometimes it was just more appealing, simply said, to stay at a hotel rather than a hostel. Even though the hostels were enjoyable, that's where you're going to get to kind of meet and hang out with a lot of other hikers. They're a really good time. I recommend checking out as many of them as possible. But sometimes it's nice just to have a private hotel room and you're only splitting, a bathroom with one person. And it's, sometimes it just works out. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you about my top 5 favorite hostels, like I said. And I will preface this by saying a lot of why I decided these are my top 5 favorites in the southern part of the trail, in most cases, are less to do with like the facilities and the amenities and more to do with the experience that I had there. And not in every case the hostel had, anything to directly do with the experience that I had, but they facilitated a great environment, for great experiences to be had, if that makes sense. But anyways, let's get started. I had to make a cheat sheet on my phone here. We'll start with the Hikers Inn. That'll be number 5, the Hikers Inn in Damascus, Virginia. That was a really cool place. Now, I ended up in Damascus twice, and that's because I was in, I guess it was Roan Mountain, Tennessee, when trail days took place. Got a ride up to Damascus and stayed at the Hikers Inn, stayed at Tent City during trail days, and then got a ride back to Roan Mountain, Tennessee, so that I could hike the section from Roan Mountain up to Damascus. And then when I got to Damascus to stay there, I ended up at the Hikers Inn. And to be completely honest, I didn't have that planned out or anything like that. Stuck Norris and I walked into town one morning. We had camped like just outside of town the night before. We had rolled into town, and as you come through the iconic, area where Trail Days is and the signs there and everything says "Welcome to Damascus," if you just keep walking through that park that's there, if you go just like half a block past that, on your left is Woodchuck Hostel, and that was a really popular place for a lot of people. But to be completely honest with you, the reason that we didn't stay there was simply because they did not allow alcohol. And I've been out in the woods for a week. When I get into town, I want to be able to enjoy a beer or a few beers and not feel like I'm being babysat. I just never got into the hostels. We're all adults here for the most part. I mean, not everybody acts like adults, but yeah, y'all know how I am about beer. I mean, especially when I had been in the woods for 4 or 5 days, I was ready to have some beer when I got into town. So that's the only reason I didn't stay there. I did hear a lot of good things about the place from other hikers that did stay there. I just walked up the street to the Hikers Inn. They were extremely nice, extremely welcoming, and we got lucky. We stayed there for 2 nights, and we only planned to stay there one night, but I guess back to the theme of beer, there is a brewery in Damascus called the Damascus Brewery, and I wasn't going to leave Damascus without checking out that brewery because for whatever reason I didn't go there during trail days. I'm sure it would have been a bit of a zoo anyways during trail days, but I didn't go during trail days. So when I got back to Damascus while I was hiking, I wanted to go to that brewery, and the way the days lined up that it was open, I think it's only, at least while I was hiking, it was only open I think Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. We had to stay an extra night to check out the brewery. But anyways, the first night we got there, we were lucky enough to rent their Airstream. They have this Airstream behind the hostel. It's really cool. It's set up extremely well for 2 people. It's got its own bathroom in it. They just really, you could tell, they had everything in there you would ever want. They had really thought of everything. It was just a really nice time. It was extremely clean. They did your laundry for you. I mean, it was a few bucks, but They got it done. They were very quick about it. The people that owned and ran the hostel, I know one of them is a former thru hiker. I'm not sure if the other one was or not, but they were just extremely nice. I can't emphasize that enough. But the Airstream was rented the second night we were there, so we stayed in a room in the house, which, I mean, this is just an immaculate house, and it's right there on the main street that goes through Damascus, so it's really neat. There's a really nice, like, big wraparound porch out front that we were able to just hang out, have a beer or two. Now in Damascus, you can't have beer visible in public, so we simply were able to put it in, like, solo cups, and then you're okay to drink beer on a porch if you can be seen from public. But anyways, it was a really good time, really enjoyable hostel. All the people that were there were just really cool, and that's probably a big part of why I enjoyed it so much. That's the first place that I had met the Appalachian at. A lot of you all have seen his videos on YouTube. Actually met him hiking down into Damascus the day before, and he was staying at the Harpers Inn Hostel, the same time Stuck Norris and I were. So got to hang out, talk to him. It was really cool, good time. I just really enjoyed the place. So that's a place really worth checking out. Even if you're just through Damascus and not hiking, there's all kinds of people that go through there to ride bicycles, and it's just generally a cool place to check out. Tiny little town. I will tell you there are no hotels in Damascus. Everybody for some reason thought, Damascus was some big town and there was going to be all kinds of lodging options, and there are quite a few hostels, but there are no hotels whatsoever there. So take advantage of the hostels. There are several good ones. All right, so number 2 is going to be Mountain Harbor Hostel. Or actually, this will be number 4, the second one I'm talking about, though. But number 4, if we're counting them down, number 5 being the Harpers Inn in Damascus, number 4 being the Mountain Harbor Hostel. That's in Roan Mountain, Tennessee. That's actually, ironically enough, the place that Stuck Norris and I had gotten a ride from to go up to Trail Days in Damascus. Now, again, a little bit of irony, we stayed there twice as well. We actually stayed at that hostel twice, not just the town, but the hostel. Now, the first time, of course, was when we got in and we were getting a ride up to Trail Days, and the second time is when we returned from Trail Days. Now, this hostel is awesome. We opted to tent there. They have this incredibly nice tenting area right there by the hostel, and there is a bed and breakfast on property as well that you can rent a room in, and it's really nice. I mean, the whole property is just beautiful, but you can rent a room in the bed and breakfast. However, Stuck Norris and I opted to tent there both times we were there. It was really affordable to tent there. There is a hostel, but it is very limited space. However, if you do tent, you can still take advantage of the showers, and more importantly, you can take advantage of the breakfast. This was, by a long shot, the best breakfast I've probably ever had in my life, but absolutely the best breakfast that I had on the trail. They just had this magnificent spread of everything you could possibly want in a breakfast. It was just extremely filling and satisfying. And I want to say it was like $10 or $12, so it was very affordable. I'm here to tell you, I couldn't have cooked the food that I ate for that amount of money. And I don't really necessarily know how they do that with hikers. I know that breakfast food is generally inexpensive, but they had some really, really good food there. If you stay there, and you should, you can actually walk there from the trail. You basically, if you're heading northbound, when you get to the road crossing that it's at, you're going to take a left and you're only going to walk a couple tenths of a mile, and you'll see it right down there on your right. So you can walk there from the trail, so there's no good reason not to stop there if you're wanting to have a great breakfast, a great place to sleep, whether it's in the bed and breakfast, in the hostel, or in the awesome tenting area. I mean, they had their Wi-Fi went out to the tenting area. That's how thorough this place was. Just a beautiful piece of property. There's a little stream that runs right through it. There's actually a food truck on site. At least there was while I was there in 2017. They had amazing food. They had tacos, burgers, like chicken sandwiches. It was all really reasonably priced. It was really nice to be there. Both times we were there, it was really nice. And they have a small little store for a small resupply to get you to the next town. It's nothing that you're going to want to resupply for 2 weeks on or anything. But they do offer a shuttle service for a fee if you do want to go into Roan Mountain. Tennessee, or I think it's Hampton, North Carolina. Anyways, there's a town in North Carolina really close as well. You can go to one or the other. But it was really enjoyable, really nice place to stay. And again, it was one of those places that they just seemed to have thought of everything. So I really enjoyed it. So the third one I'm going to talk about, and number 3, if we're counting them down from 5 to 1, is Standing Bear Hostel. Now, among hikers, that there was kind of mixed reviews about Standing Bear. Some people had way better experience, way better experience there than others did. Myself, I had an amazing experience at that place. I thought it was great. Now, I can tell you, we got there pretty early in the morning. Now, this hostel is just north of the Smoky Mountains, and it's right on the North Carolina-Tennessee border, which pretty much all of the Smoky Mountains are, and most of the trail through that area. But I think it's technically in Tennessee, but it's literally like 2 blocks from North Carolina. Anyways, that's not important. We got there early, and they don't take reservations. It's a first-come, first-served basis. And the caretaker there, I forget his name, he told us, hey, look, we do have a private cabin that it was only like $5 per person more per night, and they only allow 4 people in there per night. We were there early enough to actually secure the cabin and not have to stay in the bunkhouse. Now, the cabin is nearly the size of the bunkhouse, and the bunkhouse houses something like, I want to say, probably 12 or 14 people. So it was really nice to have that extra space, and there was only 4 of us in there for very little extra money. There were a lot of great people there. And then we got there, it would have been, let's say, April 19th, and they had their April 20th 420 party on April 20th, obviously. And because they don't take reservations and we already were in the cabin, we had sort of first right of refusal to keep the cabin, which we of course did. It was totally worth losing a day on the trail to enjoy that party. The owner of the hostel was nice enough. She invited us to the party where she had all of her friends, a lot of family and stuff, making food. They smoked a bear. There were a lot of cool people there. Like I said, that was a big part of why I enjoyed it so much. The people were awesome. We ended up getting a ride into town with somebody that was hanging out there. I guess he knew somebody, but he had a car there. Gave us a ride into town to get some beer. They do sell beer there, but the only beers they had while I was there was, I think, Fat Tire, which is not bad. It's an amber ale. And I want to say Pabst Blue Ribbon or something like that. I'm more into hoppy beers, so it was nice to go get good beer. I was able to keep it cold in the creek out in front of the cabin. It was just extremely nice. All of the friends and family that were at the party that weren't hikers were extremely friendly to hikers. A lot of people in the AT community came to celebrate, at the party. It was just a really good time. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, that particular hostel, most people that were hiking the AT were pretty divided. They either loved it or they hated it. And a lot of the people that had issues at that hostel, those issues were not present whatsoever while I was there. But I'm not prepared to say that that they didn't have a bad experience, because certainly they could have. But I really enjoyed it. It was a really good time, and we timed it perfectly at that one. So, anyways, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but the washing machine just hit the spin cycle, and I apparently did not load it evenly. So I'm going to handle that real quick, and I'll be right back. We'll go over the top 2 hostels. Just a second. All right, I made it back. Sorry about that. Hey, this is show business, people. I'm working without a net here. But anyways, let's move on. So number 2 in the list, the countdown from number 5 to number 1. Number 2 is I had a really good time here, and there's a lot of cool stories that came from it, and that is St. Luke's Hostel. We did not plan at all to stay anywhere or at a hostel or anything like that whatsoever when we came to St. Okay, so here's the story. Stuck Norris and I were hiking along one day. It was a pretty warm day. We're both pretty low on water. And we had gotten to a road crossing. It was just like a little mountain road. I don't even know if it was paved or not. It might have been gravel. But either way, we get there. There's a big rock there. We sit down. We start to have lunch. We're both, like I said, we're very low on water. We look at the book. We've got a ways to go for water. And right there before the road crossing, there's a sign that says St. Luke's Hostel, and there's a phone number. And we had looked at it in the book, but we figured, oh, we're going to hike on through because it was only a couple more days to the town just north of that. I don't remember what town it was. But we had stopped there for lunch. While we were there, we had just sort of decided, hey, we're really low on water. We were both pretty parched at the time, and there was a good amount of time before we got to the next reliable water source. So we said, let's go ahead and call this hostel, and we'll at least go down there and try to get some water, get back up to the trail, and hike out from there. So as we're thinking about it and like getting our phones out, these two girls show up. They're heading north as well. They come up on the trail, and we had literally just met them the night before. They were Chirpin' Tiger. They're really cool people. We had just met them really the afternoon before, right before we got up to Chestnut Knob Shelter, which is a pretty popular shelter. It's really cool. It's all stone, and it's really neat. But anyways, they stayed there that night, and Stuck Norris had hiked on, and I had hiked on maybe another mile or so that night. But we hiked with them a little bit, got to talking to them. They seemed really cool. Well, long story short, they come up right behind us before we call the hostel, and literally, like as they're coming out of the woods, a truck pulls up, this big truck, and there's a guy driving it, and he's like, hey, anybody going to the hostel? And we all like look at each other, and Stuck Norris and I were like, yeah, well, we're gonna at least get some water. And we asked them, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna go down there. So he's like, hey, get in the bed of the truck. Now, we had no idea who this guy was. We had jokes that he was a serial killer and all that, but we had no clue who he was. We hop in the bed of his truck. He's got like this big F-250, and he just goes tearing down the mountain. I mean, hauling ass. We're having to hold on to our hats. It was scary. And like I said, we had no idea who this guy was. But anyways, we finally roll into the hostel, and it looks legit and everything. And we get out of the bed of the truck, and it turns out he was Mark. He was the owner of the hostel. And he's just a really nice, interesting guy. He's somebody you should really take some time to get to know. But anyways, that was really cool. Even though his driving is a little fast, he freaked some people out. But he's a super nice guy. He has this beautiful old farmhouse in Burke's Garden, Virginia, which if you don't know what Burke's Garden is or what it's about, you should check it out. It's basically this gigantic limestone sinkhole where a bunch of limestone caverns collapsed a long, long time ago and created this gigantic sinkhole that, people for a long time thought it was a crater. People were calling it God's thumbprint. Anyways, it's this beautiful, it's just created like this awesome valley with just mountains the whole way around it. And apparently there's really fertile soil there. There's a big Amish presence there. So there's a lot of farming and stuff like that. But it's just absolutely gorgeous. He's got this old farmhouse on a ton of property. In the back porch, you just have this amazing view, up of the mountains. And you can even kind of see the road. Or, when people are driving down the mountain, you can see their car like where we were driving. It was just such a beautiful place. This place absolutely gets the #1 view at a hostel on the trail, at least that I stayed at. It was just absolutely gorgeous. Turned out that Mark was an extremely nice guy. Like I said, he does have a hostel, which is like a converted building on the property that he's getting up to snuff, and it looks really nice. Stuck Norris and I, however, opted to stay in the house. He does rent rooms out, at least he did while we were there, and he had a room with 2 beds in it, so Stuck Norris and I stayed in the house, which was great because it was just this really cool old farmhouse. It was in really good shape, though. It was very clean, very nice, and we had use of the kitchen and really nice bathrooms. That was one of the better showers on the trail as well, as a side note. But just a really neat place. And that's the one place on the trail we were able to see basically a double rainbow, which was super cool to see 2 rainbows. And we also got to see the end of a rainbow, like out in the field, which was just, I had never seen that in my life. It was just really, really cool, really beautiful place. He's raising hogs to eventually, be able to eat and things like that. And just a neat place. Something you should check out, and you really should hang out and talk to Mark, the owner. Just really stand-up guy. He took us into town and only charged us for fuel, which was very inexpensive. And we split it up a couple of different ways. I mean, it was just a few bucks a piece. So he wasn't, trying to get rich off this or anything. He took us into town again. He had scared, I think it was Chirp, that was up in the front of the truck, and he's going up over the mountains, and he had her all freaked out. And I mean, none of us had been in vehicles. In all fairness, none of us had been in a vehicle in quite some time. And he was moving pretty fast on those windy roads through the mountains, but he knew him. That's where he lives. He took us into town. We ended up staying there a day past when, we planned to leave. We were actually not going to stay there at all. Like I said, we were going to get water. But because Chirp and Tiger were staying, we stayed that first night. And then it rained all day the following day, so we opted to just stay there another night. He took us back into town, went to the Piggly Wiggly, got some beer, some more food. He let us use the kitchen, cooked like ribeyes and asparagus. I mean, really did it up there. It was a really great time. I highly recommend you check it out. All right, so my favorite hostel, and I struggled with this one because it's not really a hostel, but it kind of is. So I'm putting it on the list, and it was my favorite place that I'm going to call a hostel that I stayed on the AT, and that was the MacArthur Inn. And the reason I'm going to call it a hostel, it's technically a hotel, but the owner, his name's Alan, and he was a super nice guy. He has two or three, I think there's three, like hiker rooms downstairs, and it's kind of a hostel scenario to where everybody shares bathrooms, and yeah, you do get a little bit of privacy. It's similar to having a private room in a hostel, but you have like shared bathrooms. So it's very similar in like the hiker area, but he is in Narrows, Virginia, that's the town you'll come to. Most people will go in to Pearisburg, Virginia, and to be honest, that's where we went first when we got into Pearisburg. We went into Pearisburg and stayed a night and ended up moving over to Narrows because we had saw a flyer at I want to say it was at a shelter, like on a picnic table, and the hotel we were staying at was completely booked for the next night that we wanted to stay in town. Stuck Norris had a situation with his phone. He had to get his cell phone replaced while we were in town, so it hung us up for a day. So we just called Alan, and he was great. I would have went there to begin with, to be honest with you. Narrows is a much smaller town, but there's everything you need, and it's all within like eyesight of the hotel / hostel. It's great. There's a grocery store literally across the street. There's a creek. If you want to go fishing, you can do that. Stuck Norris carried a fishing pole while we were in Virginia and went and got a fishing license because we were in Virginia for so long. And he was able to go fishing for trout. It was just a really good time. I mean, everything you need. The owner, Alan, he'll pick you up from the trail and take you to the MacArthur Inn. And it's actually the oldest hotel in the United States named after General Douglas MacArthur. So it's got a lot of history. It's a really cool place. But he'll pick you up at the trailhead where the trail basically crosses a road and take you to the MacArthur Inn. And he has no problem taking you into Pearisburg if you want to go hit up the Chinese buffet. There's a Walmart in Pearisburg if you want a bigger grocery store. He'll take you there. It's really cool. I really liked Narrows, Virginia. There was this tiny little brewery that was in a bank that I really enjoyed. It was just a really good time. I just can't say enough about it. Now, we had a great time while we were there. And when it was finally time to leave, Alan took us back to the trailhead. And we really enjoyed ourselves while we were there. We were able to hang out on that front porch. He's got these rocking chairs on this big, beautiful front porch. But anyways, he took us back to the trail, and he had offered something up. He asked, hey, y'all guys like bluegrass music? Because he heard us listening to some bluegrass while we were on the porch. And of course we said, yeah, we enjoy that kind of music. He said, all right, well, I think it's like once a week. They have a bunch of local musicians come in and play some mountain music, and it's just sort of a jam session. And he said, hey, if you guys can make it from here to this other place, this other basically road crossing in the next 3 days, which is when that was going to take place. That was the day of the week. I think it was like a Thursday or something. He said, call me when you get there, and I'll pick you up, and you can come stay with me, and you can check this out. And sure enough, man, we called him when we got to that road crossing. And he's like, yeah, I knew you'd call me. And he came and got us, picked us up, took us back to the MacArthur Inn. Now, we had hiked far enough in a few days that the drive, I mean, it was like a 30-45 minute drive each way. So it was really cool of him to take the time out of his day to come pick us up, take us to the MacArthur, not charge us, let us check out the music. He fed us really cheap. They have like a restaurant in the bottom floor of the MacArthur Inn, and I think we had like stuffed peppers or something. But he only charged us like $5. He was just really cool, really great guy. Can't say enough about it. When you're coming through the Harrisburg area, I would really recommend checking out Narrows and checking out Alan at the MacArthur Inn. Oh, and he also took us up to his property. He owns the mountain behind the hotel, and he's got his house and everything's up there. And took us up there to check out his horses, which were two of the absolutely biggest horses I've ever seen in my life. They were just beautiful animals. Let us check out his koi fish. Just a super cool all around interesting guy. He's got this legendary mustache too. You'll never miss the guy. He's actually into like beard and mustache competition. So it's just really, really cool. It was a really good time. You should really check it out and get to know Alan. So that was my favorite, I would say, hostel. That one's more of a hostel situation on the trail. But there's one more that I got to mention, and it's definitely not, wasn't like a normal hostel. Sorry about that. Speaking of noise, you can probably hear that. Forget the washing machine. I should have set a coaster down here or something. You can probably hear my beer. It's right here where my mic is. Anyways, whatever. I'll try to be more quiet with it. But, okay, so the one I'm going to talk about was actually my absolute favorite, without a shadow of a doubt, situation on the entire trail, and that was Miss Janet's pop-up hostel. Now, obviously, that's not like a normal situation. It's not a normal hostel you can go to. If you don't know who Miss Janet is, well, if you're planning to thru hike, just get to know her. She is a great person to know. She is one of the nicest, kindest, most awesome, generous people you ever meet in your entire life, as well as on the trail. She was just nothing but kind. Stuck Norris and I had met her back in the Smokies. Then we saw her again at Standing Bear Hostel, and she had even offered it up back when we were at Standing Bear Hostel. She said when you get into Erwin, Tennessee, which is where she lives, that's where she's from, that's where her house is at. She said, when you get there, give me a call, and, I may have a little bit of work around the house, but I'll feed you, I'll slack pack you and all this. So we get into Erwin, Tennessee, and as soon as I get down to the corner there, where you're on the Nolichucky River or whatever it's called, I give her a call, and she's like, yeah, sure, I'll come pick you up. She came down to the river and picked us up. My dad was meeting us in town, so the first night we stayed at a hotel in Erwin, Tennessee. But then once my dad, we got to hang out with him, which was a great time. Once he was done, we went over and hung out with Miss Janet. So we stayed at her house for like a week. It was just an amazing time. And she did not have to open up her house. Now, she did allow a group of hikers to stay there while kind of the bubble was coming through Erwin, Tennessee. And, Miss Janet sees thousands of people over the course of a year, giving them rides. She follows the bubble. She's just a legendary trail angel. But yeah, she sees thousands of people, get in her vehicle. She gets her, gives them a ride, doesn't ask for anything. I do highly recommend that you at least donate a few bucks for fuel or something like that, because it is, she doesn't charge it. She just does it because she's an awesome person. But yeah, she sees so many people get in, get out, get to know them. But she only invites so many people to come over to her place. And it was a very small group of people. And the people that we met there were actually our best friends. When I say our, I'm talking about Stuck Norris and myself. They were some of our best friends. Even to this day, I keep in touch with most of those people. They were all great people. We all got to hang out when we got to trail days together again. It was just a really cool core group. Like, there were so few people that had that experience that pretty much everybody, the hostel had a pop-up hostel. She had like one of those big Rubbermaid containers. Well, pretty much everybody was able to sign the lid of one of those that was able to enjoy that experience. It was just awesome. The whole time we were there, She didn't ask for anything. Like, we helped out. We like cleaned the windows and did a little bit of yard work, and kept, cleaned up after ourselves. She didn't charge a nickel, and she slack packed us the whole time we were there, from place to place. We got a lot of trail done. She also took us to a Golden Corral in Johnson City, Tennessee, which was awesome. I mean, how many people on their through hike get the experience of going to a Golden Corral? I don't know of any other ones, but I mean, there are sections that I wouldn't know, but I'm telling you, in the southern half, that was just really cool, really enjoyable. And to be completely honest with you, at her house, at her pop-up hostel, that's where I had sort of made the decision that, hey, I'm going to quit stressing out about time and just hauling, what, to get up the trail, and, worrying about time and how many miles I need to make in a day and all that. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy the trail. I don't care what happens. I'm out here to enjoy it. I'm not out here to stress out about it. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to meet the people. I'm going to see the sights. I'm going to check out the towns. If there's a waterfall and it's a half mile off the trail, I'm going to go see that waterfall if I want to see it, and not be flying through the trail just for the sake of saying that I got it done or got it done quick or anything like that. So, I mean, I really owe a lot of my mentality about long distance hiking and through hiking and all of that kind of stuff to the experience that I had at Miss Janet's house. Surely I'm forgetting all kinds of stuff about all of these experiences. There's just so many stories, so many great people. It was such an enjoyable time. I just, can't say enough about, all of the people that I got to meet out there. That was my absolute favorite thing about the trail, if you're curious, was the people that I got to meet by a long shot. The trail's amazing too. The trail's beautiful, but the people, man, they are awesome. All right. So that pretty much wraps it up for, there I go making noise with my glass again. I'm going to get coasters for the next video. We're gonna up our audio game here. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. If you're curious, I didn't even talk about the beer I drank last video, but the beer I'm drinking this video, I'm actually drinking 2 beers, and that's the High Lie. This is the aged in white oak, and of course, this is the first time I've had it, so I'm also drinking it against the original variety. And you should do the same. They're both good. I've always really liked the High Lie. Now, is the white oak aged beer better? I'll let you decide. You should go get both. If you're not into hoppy beers, you should go get 2 different varieties of beers that you do like and try them. Get a 6-pack of each. And if you get a 6-pack of each, then that means you don't have to go back to the store for like at least another couple of hours. But anyways, they're both very good. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm sure this video got like way longer. I was going to try to do this in like 10 or 15 minutes, but you know how it goes. If you've seen my videos, they just get long. Anyways, if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them below. Thanks everybody for all the positive feedback. I have a lot of fun talking about this. To be completely real with you, I had a blast going through my guidebook and seeing the towns, to even come up with this list. And it actually inspired me to I will be doing a video of my top places, and I don't even know how I can narrow them down to how many, maybe five, possibly 10 top places that are non-hostel that I stayed on the trail. And I'll try to think of the stories that, brought me to the conclusion that they are in my top. Because I stayed at a lot of places. Most of I stayed in every town. So not a ton of hostels, but in every town I stayed somewhere. So I was inspired to make another list. And I'll be making a video on that because there's some really cool stories and some cool places that I think you should check out if you're planning on doing a long distance hike or even just a long section hike. Hopefully you can find some value in this. But definitely leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. Let me know what other kind of videos you want me to do. I'm going to continue to do some gear reviews. I don't know if you can hear it down this fancy fireplace, but it's raining outside. I do want to get a review of my tent up, which is a Z-Pax duplex. But that didn't happen. So we're just having a nice little fireside chat here, talking about my top 5 favorite hostels on the southern half of the AT. So anyways, it's been fun, and I will talk to you next time.